Hi everyone and welcome to our very first AI Academy session. We are very excited not to only have a very interesting topic today with literature searches and AI, one of the key fundamental topics also relevant for us when we address medical inquiries, as they obviously can be a central part of some of our questions we want to address for our doctors and patients, but also because they are very time consuming and AI is very promising to support us. On the other hand, we know that in medical information and medical affairs, we have to follow scientific principles, and therefore we have also to overcome some challenges with AI. I'm very excited also about our amazing speaker today, Stefan, who will run hopefully a fantastic and great AI session around basically hands-on experiences with AI. I would suggest we kick this off and go to the first slide, and I'm happy to say a few words about the AI before we get started. So what is the AI Academy and what is the purpose and what can you expect? So, my name is Nina. I'm basically working for the company AVAYL, and what we have seen with a lot of basically across the industry with a lot of people in medical information that of course it is changing, right? We have a lot of different AI tools and AI experiences and opportunities, but at the same time, there are a lot of questions. What will happen even in medical information and medical affairs in the future with AI? And what we can see already with the basically users of AI across the industry, that there are so-called super medical information leaders, basically that manage capabilities in medical information, but also basically learn how to effectively use AI in their workflow. But then we also see the opposite. What happens like if we do not know exactly how to actually effectively run a literature search, and if you do not know exactly how to actually build a search string, then what we also see is that people, if they use an AI but do not master yet the capabilities that are required to make information, then you have also an acceleration in the wrong direction. And therefore, the whole purpose of the AI Academy is to help basically with both, helping learning basically from experts across the industry, what are the best principles to address medical inquiries, but also many other topics, but also learn how to effectively use. And the goal is also to show different types of AI systems, so helping you in your daily workflows with basically AI is the goal of this. As we believe that we can succeed in the transformation best by working together in a collaboration. This initiative has been driven also with my phactMI and PIPA. Maybe if the colleagues want to switch on their cameras for a moment, and they're with us here today also, as they have been also a major force in driving this initiative and making sure, so great to see you. I see here some very nice and familiar faces. Thanks a lot for joining and making this also a big success so far. And the goal is obviously with the associations and their knowledge and expertise. I can see Jen, I see Laura, that's great. So having Michelle, I can also see now. And I see also Evelyn is with us, that's fantastic. So it's really great to have you all on board, and thanks for pushing this and bringing all your expertise and knowledge in, making sure that also the communities benefit the most. And to also drive this successfully, a few little comments about what will happen in the future that you can also best prepare. So basically the AI Academy's main goal is helping you in an informed way, basically learning how to effectively use AI. And there will be on a monthly basis tutorials like this, where experts will come and in practice show you basically how they use AI in their daily workflows. The topics are all driven by yourself. So we had asked the communities and asked what topics could be most relevant, and literature searches were was one of the key topics. But as you can see, also the next scheduled sessions, navigate copyright, for example, was one of the topic that was interesting for most of the people. So if you have not yet registered for the next session, you can just click on or scan the QR code here and directly register already for the next session in December on copyright. Those sessions are all for free. You can just access, you can also distribute those with your colleagues. And all the content will be also available through the phactMI and PIPA as well as AVAYL website. So any of the content, you don't need to take any screenshots or kind of take notes of it. You can, but all of the content will be also available through the associations, making sure that we can help you also best in your journey and your own capability building. With that said, let's move on and focus on the session for today. So as you can see, our learning objectives for today are basically focusing on what is even a systematic literature today and how it may change or not change with AI, and how we can use AI also in a responsible way. And the goal is to basically learn this as much as possible in a hands-on experience today. So after this introduction, we will then basically get started looking into the principles of a systematic literature search. And then Stefan will help us better understanding how to use AI across different types of systems, where you can also learn how to basically navigate with single tasks as well as whole workflows in a system. And then towards the end of the session, we have planned to have also an open Q&A. You can, of course, already paste your questions throughout the meeting, basically in the chat. If it matches, then we will basically pick them up immediately. Otherwise, towards the end of the session, we will then have a good open Q&A session to address most of your questions. With that said, I'm more than excited and delighted now finally handing over to Stefan. Stefan is a very seasoned medical information expert, but he has been also using AI for now, I think, a quite long time, and uses different tools in his daily life. We are very proud and happy to welcome Stefan here, and with a warm welcome over to you, Stefan.
Thank you so much for this kind introduction, Mina. So to tell you a little bit about myself and my background, I started as a biologist in academia, and I was a postdoctoral researcher and lecturer, which also led me actually to move to the UK from Austria to work as a postdoc at Exeter University. After my academic career, I wanted to work in the industry and specifically in medical information. Here I started with Pharma Group, right at the base of medical information, as a multilingual and then later as a senior multilingual medical information specialist, directly being in contact with patients and HCPs and responding to their medical information inquiries. During the pandemic, I did work for Pfizer as medical information associate in a mixed tier 1, tier 2 role, and moved later on to Ipsen into a tier 2 role at the local affiliate of UK and Ireland as senior medical information officer. This role really helped me grow in medical information, as it was a very highly cross-functional role, as medical information roles often are, but it still depends on how it is. We have a little bit of feedback. Maybe we can mute everyone. So this really helped me grow, and I could further grow in medical information and see fully at the second level and the local affiliate side what medical information is in a pharma company. Then later on, I moved to a global role to see also the global perspective to it, and managed the medical information contact centers globally at Ipsen, and there this really also helped me to see the differences between a local affiliates needs and the global needs, and also the different needs with different regions and different affiliates might have in medical information. In my current role at Recordati as Global Medical Information Manager, I'm again very grateful to work in a highly agile and highly innovative team, which also helped me to be here, because we always embrace new technologies and new ways of working in medical information to provide a better output and a faster output for our customers. So just as a disclaimer, this content and the following things I'm going to talk about is concerning my own experience and my own professional opinion. That's not presenting an official standard or requirement for others to follow. I do not have any financial interest or personal relationship which influenced me in the content and the material presented. And it's the insights are shared as a hands-on experience with AI tools and professional practice in the field. So before we jump into systematic literature searches and principles and practices, I talked about myself. Now I would like to know from you, that we open a question in a poll, what your experience is in MI. If you could just take a few seconds and respond to the question, for how long have you been working in medical information? You can see the first results coming in, which is great. Let's just give it a few more seconds. So I already got over 100 responses. I think we have a highly experienced crowd here, which is always great. I'm looking forward to the question sessions then, because we have a lot of people, 66% have over 5 years experience in MI, which is really great to hear. But hopefully also for the ones who are less experienced, this session can also bring you some value. So let's start in systematic literature searches, principles and practices. Just to have it as a general overview, we go through the basics of literature search. That is, systemic literature search is guided by 5 key principles to ensure comprehensive, objective, reproducible, high quality and up-to-date results. So if you look at the definition, so a systemic literature search in medical information is a structured and transparent process designed to identify, evaluate, synthesize evidence and support accurate, consistent and informed medical responses. By adhering to those standardized methodologies, experts ensure to generate robust, high-quality conclusions that are guided by the following key principles. It needs to be comprehensive, so comprehensively capture all relevant studies across multiple sources to minimize bias. To be objective, use structured methods to structure your search and subjective selection to ensure balanced evidence collection. Reproducible. So to the objectiveness, there's no cherry picking. So you can't just pick publications you like and just leave out other publications. What you find and what is relevant to your question, you need to be objective and include it. It also needs to be reproducible. So document the methods you've used, document your strategies you've used, the databases you've used. So others, especially also reviewers of your content, can actually replicate your search and follow your steps. It needs to be quality focused, critically assess the studies to ensure reliability, relevance, and high quality evidence. It also needs to be up to date. Knowledge and research moves on, so do publications. So your research question also might have evolved, and your search then also needs to go with it, and your search needs to be up to date to follow that, to actually reproduce the current state of knowledge. We have tried to visualize this process in the following cone you can see and separate it into 3 main steps. So it starts with the biggest section of the cone, which is the research question and the search strategy. Then you go to the screening and selection, then the data extraction, the synthesis and contextualization of your findings and writing the medical content. Let's have a bit of a deep dive into the funnel step 1, so the question and the search strategy. First, you need to define the research question and your search strategy. Define the scope. So scoping your research question, break it down into question and into concepts. You can use, for example, PICO. And here I would like to ask you a quick question in a poll. If you're familiar with the concept of PICO and if you're using it or if you're not using it. So if you can start the poll here, please. So let's just have a bit of a thing. Okay, there's the questions. Thank you very much. The questions are really coming in super fast. So it's a bit mixed. So a lot of you are not familiar, which is great, because I can show you actually a bit about PICO, and it's of course also good if you use it. It's a handy system to do. Okay, so then let's move on. So, but before we move to PICO, I'm going to go through the recommended actions here in full. So also, apart from to have it broken down into concepts like PICO, it's also important to consider synonyms. There might be that your drug has different synonyms, that the question of the concept they've asked is not just in one word known. It might have been published in different synonyms, so you also need to consider that. There's systems in place which can help you with that, which we'll see later on, but it's something to consider to actually engulf and capture all of the available publications. Then as a second step, collect initial and evidence sets. So identify which databases you want to search. If you're looking for a clinical trial, obviously clinicaltrials.gov might be a good starting point. But if you're more looking for publications, PubMed, Embase, or Web of Science might be the places where you want to look for relevant information. It's also to be considered that those have their own search strategies and their own things. So just think about which databases are relevant to you. Then build the search string which is suitable for your database. And apply techniques like keywords, mesh terms, Boolean operators, which we will show you later on a little bit more, to broaden or narrow your search. Then the third point goes into the reproducibly again, that you need to test your strategy, revise your strategy, and also document your search strategy that it can be reproduced. It's also important if your initial strategy has just 0 results that you need to tweak it. You just revise the strategy, retrace your steps, and maybe broaden your search, and then find some information to your question. We're now going into the PICO a bit more in detail, how it can help you with a medical inquiry example, which you can see here on the left, and I'm just going quickly through it. That's just how a standard email you would receive usually. So someone is seeking information regarding the efficacy of bisoprolol in adults with hypertension. So specifically, they are interested in how bisoprolol compares to the standard of antihypertensive care, also therapy, in terms of reducing systolic blood pressure after a treatment period of approximately 12 weeks. So if available, can you please provide any clinical study data comparing bisoprolol with standard of therapy or placebo, and then relevant outcomes of systolic blood pressure reduction and overall blood pressure control, and safety data, adverse events, and products related to bisoprolol. So this is quite a long question, and we need to break it down to the actual essence. And this is where PICO comes in handy. So PICO stands for population or patient, intervention, comparison, and outcome. So what is the leading question? Who are the patients this question is about? It's adults with hypertension. What is the intervention? So that's the bisoprolol coming in. So that's the drug which is the intervention. What should we compare it to? So the comparison of the intervention should be with the standard of the antihypertensive therapy. What is the outcome? They want to see how it compares in the reduction of systolic blood pressure after 12 weeks. And as mentioned before, also consider the synonyms to all of that. So adults with hypertension might be just patients, or either individuals, hypertensive patients, or patients with high blood pressure instead of hypertension. Bisoprolol might have, a different investigational name and might have some interesting publications under that name, or using then a different brand name or a generic name, a different one. There's synonyms to consider in the intervention as well. And also in the comparison, then see if the standard of therapy, it might also be that is the usual care, called like that, or current treatment, or placebo. Just think about those synonyms. And again, also for the outcome, it might be blood pressure, it might be cardiovascular outcomes, it might be BP control. So if you include those synonyms, then you will increase the search output of your search string. Up down here, it's just summarized from this large question. We summarized it down, basically what we mentioned up here, to have that contextualized in a quite concise question. That's now my PICO question. How can I use that further? So with that question going on, are the Boolean operators which come in. This slide is more for you than to take home and keep. I'm not going to talk through all of it in detail, but I'd like to mention a few of the operators here, which are also for me kind of the most used. That's the AND, where you can actually have both terms then in your search string, which will narrow the search. So both of them need to be applicable to be added into your search results, or the OR, one of them. So either of the terms that will broaden your search, open it up, that either one of them is there and it will include the results of that, or not. If you think of our research question now here, it's about adults with hypertension. So not, we can already exclude here everything which is not in adults, for example, adolescents or pediatric patients. That's also possible by using filters, and filters is something which is also very important in the literature search. You can filter by population or age group, by the publication year, only to have the recent results. For example, you just want to see the last 5 years. Things which are not that commonly used but also come in very handy can be truncations and wildcards. If you want to usually broaden your search, if you want to have, for example, here we have the word genetic, but also you want to have genetics instead of writing both words with an and or, you can just write genet and have the asterisk there. So all variations at the end of that word will be included in your search. Similarly, it is with wildcards, with the question mark. You can include, for example, here we have woman or woman, depending on different spellings. You can add words to your search. If we now move to the funnel step number 2, the study screening and selection. So we have defined a search string, we've actually got our results, and now we're going to evaluate the literature. We need to screen the selected evidence, and all of you know this can be a quite time-consuming process because, especially if you have a large set of results, you will screen the titles and the abstracts for its relevance. If you have identified those publications to be relevant, you would receive the full text and of those eligible studies and further evaluate the data from those studies. Analyze the full text for its relevance for the inquiry. For example, is it really about adults? That would be including it. Is it still, even though our filters and everything was set, about the pediatric population? Then you would exclude then this full text, of course, of your results. This is also the assessment of the population and the comparator outcomes and the results. And also identifying then further relevant studies. The so-called snowballing is a part of this step to evaluate your data. So you can have a wonderful review article and actually see there's some citations which I think would be relevant on its own. And if they're not already included in your search results, you then can pick those out of the citation list. And as the name is saying, snowballing, you can also go to those and further data following down the reference trail and add them to your research. Then document clearly, of course, again, clearly report the databases you have used, the search strategies you have used. Why did you include something? Why did you exclude certain criteria? And the date of your search. The third step, also the funnel step number 3, the data extraction, the synthesis, and the contextualization. So the content retrieval then summarize all of the relevant study information. In medical information, at least from my personal experience, often the safety and efficacy, obviously outcomes are very important. The dose, the dosing schedule, or even the formulation used is important and has to be summarized from those studies, and also identify potential sources of bias. There might be that, if you summarize those studies, that they are not 100% unbiased, so you need to identify that and address it. To extract then also the study characteristics, the author, the title, the type, and the date. It's important to differentiate if you have like clinical trial publications or peer review publication, or you have case reports. So there's just different types in the evidence pyramid. Then to synthesize, contextualize the evidence of the inquiry, which might be highly consistent or divergent. So you might have that paper A says this, paper B says this. You can then, of course, no cherry picking, as I said, you need to produce then all of those opinions or results in a way that you can incorporate them in your response. And you can also identify gaps in the evidence. It might be that simply for this question, there is not a conclusive answer. It's just how present what you found, and then, of course, identify the gaps in the evidence. It's also important to have a robust review process in place, so to involve a reviewer to ensure double data extraction is there for accuracy. And again, here, which I've said before, the reviewer is very happy with you if you actually have traceable steps, how you came to your conclusions, and you can document what search strings have you used, what databases have you used, so you get to the same conclusion. Okay, so I've got 2 questions before we jump into using AI for speed and better outcomes. So the first question would be, how often do you use AI in your daily or weekly or whatever in your medical information work? Just going to have a quick look at the responses, which are coming in very fast again, which is really great. So it's mixed. Again, I mean, there's a clear lead that people daily use AI. I mean, it's a very big topic and very important. So I definitely am one of those to use it daily. But we can also see there's people who never use AI actually in their medical information work. So yeah, that's a completely mixed. So let's see how maybe we can use AI to speed up the processes. But, and I forgot that, we actually have a second question. Which AI tools do you successfully use in your work in medical information? So let's also please, if you can, respond the second question. So I can see, of course, this is a bit slower but it way in the lead at the moment is Copilot, which I can see. But just give it a few more seconds. So I think from what I can see, we have a clear winner because there's multiple uses of different iterations of Copilot. And I think in second place, you might find ChatGTP, which is good. It's interesting because that's actually very good because we are going to use Copilot as one of the examples and also ChatGTP. And I can also see MedPro here, which is also going to be one of the examples. Okay, thank you so much. So let's move on and how we use AI for speed and better outcomes. As I've just spoiled, we are going to use an example of Copilot, one of ChatGTP, and also use MedPro for different examples. So Copilot is an example for the usual company approved and used chatbots or large language models. Then ChatGTP is an example for generic and one of the most famous large language models. And MedPro as an example for purpose-built AI tool for medical information. And we're going to explore how those tools can, support you either each step of the way or for specific steps, we're going to use it and what the limitations might be or what the benefits might be. And again, this is not an exhaustive list. I know that there's a lot of different other AI tools out there, but simply we chose those three for various reasons. So first of all, let's look at Copilot, and which is kind of a ChatGTP-like in its search capabilities, but it has the advantage that it can also use your internal and external sources. And we've prepared a video here of an example use of it, and this is just for speed. We used the research question which I've just talked through and just put it in Copilot and said, provide me an answer. I'm seeking for internal information on the efficacy of bisoprolol, and the same is the adults and the antihypertensive care compared to the standard of care. And you can see, in which probably most of you are already familiar with from your responses in the poll I could see with Copilot, it creates an answer. It will go through certain steps. It might have, some internal data here. And this one I actually looked at, and it used the internal publications we had for it to provide this response. It already showed a little bit of external data there as well, which was interesting because I actually asked it to use the internal data, but it already explored the web a bit more. So I then asked it, okay, expand it fully and provide a response with a systematic literature search of the external sources. And it provides, as you can see, more evidence. Okay, it also goes to the safety aspects. It gives a comparative summary. Okay, now I would like to have that actually, summarize that for medical information response for healthcare professionals. Because at the moment we haven't defined that yet, we haven't prompted that yet. So prompting is a very important part. So now it starts what Copilot thinks, okay, this could be a good medical information. I start with the question, I summarize the answer. It gives you already a safety profile, key points, and a list of references. And it suggests shall I format that in a standard medical information response already on its own? So we let it do that as well. And you can see what it produces is what Copilot interprets as this is the standard of a medical information response. So if we move to the second example where we used it now completely, from the question to having a response to only using it for part of it. We are now using ChatGPT only to create a search string to build, and we go into the pros and cons after that. So we told ChatGPT, okay, please create a search string. So this is a functionality. Sometimes it's a bit underused. It took me a while before I actually realized why do I create search strings if I can just AI to do it. So we feed it the question and say, okay, this is our question, and please create a search string for it. Just as a bit of advice here is also because I haven't defined for which database. For which database is important. Here it automatically then said, okay, I'm going to use mesh terms, I'm going to use the synonyms for it. It automatically identified it, and I will use PubMed. So it used PubMed as a standard, but it might not be the case. It might use then the search string, as we've talked before. The search string needs to be specific for your database. It might create a search string for a database you don't want to use, so also define which search string you want to use. If you then enter this search string into PubMed, you can see it will provide you with the responses according to the search string it created. So what are the big advantages of that? You could see this was all very fast. I acknowledge that, and we can then talk more about that in the question and answers. But it also showed how fast you can create initial responses just by using your question, putting it to a large language model, and it gives you an initial search of the data and of the direction of your response, where it might go. It's a very rapid search string draft generation. It created that. It does support you in your text drafting. It did already use the Boolean logic and implement Pico ad hoc. It was in the iterations there, because large language models are very good to following logical steps, which literal search is a follow of logical steps. And it might be very helpful for general knowledge searches. And already mentioned, user-friendly interface, very fast. But what are the key points you need to be aware of and to be very wary of as well? So it might just use validated and non-validated, outdated and non-relevant data mixed. There might be data gaps, because only Copilot would have the functionality to use your previous SRDs or SRLs internal data. ChatGPT wouldn't. There is a bit of a thing that you don't know how it came to that. It's a bit of an opaque search. So it creates it. I mean, it tells you a little bit in a few seconds what it is using, but there's a lot of things going on where it only presents you very fast and very quickly with the results, but it doesn't provide you necessarily with all the steps it has followed. And there's a very real risk of hallucinations. I encounter it basically on a weekly basis, and also the AI gets smarter every time, because usually it was just like it just faked a publication or something like that. In this case, actually, said, oh, this publication, something's off with it. And then I asked it, is this actually, did you make that up? And it said, no, I didn't. It's completely fully, verified and all. And then I needed to really, really show it. No, actually, this publication is completely a different publication, what you're saying. And then finally, it actually admitted, I made that up. So because it aims to please. It always aims to please. It will always try to provide you with some answers. It might also provide you with search strings which might be incorrect or have non-existing terms, because it wants to create a search string for you. That's then always a try and error. You can then try the search strings in the databases, and I had search strings which just didn't work. But it can also be very useful to create a search string very fast. One thing you also need to be aware of, that potential bias you would have in your question, because you're literally just taking your question and moving it into the system and ask it to create a response or a search string. You will carry that bias over. So if the question was already formulated in a very biased way, the large language model or the Copilot or any other AI tool will carry this bias with. And there's also security considerations with ChatGTP, as that's also why a lot of companies restrict its use, because you don't want to have your confidential data ending up somewhere training a large language model. If you now look into a purpose-built system like MedPro to enable us systematic, transparent, and audible literature research, and going through all of the questions, from 1 to 3, from the research question to screening the studies, and then to extract the data and actually create our medical information response,